Welcome everybody to this second day of the Multispecies Heritage Conference. For those people who joined us yesterday and are rejoining us today, a very warm welcome again. And to the people who were not able to join us yesterday, joining us for the first time today, again, hello and welcome. And I will just make a couple of quick comments for those people who are new to the conference today. This is one of a series of events which is organised by the Multispecies Storytelling Network, which is run by Brett and I. It's an academic network. It's funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council, and it's part of the Landscape Decisions programme. And I should mention that we're very grateful to the Landscape Decisions programme coordination team, and particularly to Rhiannon Hartchance and to Beth Cole, who have very kindly hosted this session today and yesterday. So thank you very much to them. Oh, sorry, I've got things falling over here. The Multispecies Storytelling Network has a number of aims. It's particularly interested in how multi-species approaches can contribute to landscape decision making. And as you know, our conference today is focusing on multi-species heritage, and it's something that we think suggests these different relationships and connections, entanglements and so on, with other species that manifest or exist in real, imagined or symbolic landscapes and spaces. And so that's why we're really interested in bringing together a range of different ideas around multi-species heritage. And as I mentioned yesterday, we put this network together and the ideas for the network in what we might think of now as the pre-COVID era. And we obviously envisaged the network running in a very particular way, and it was going to be mainly UK based. And COVID, one of the outcomes of COVID has been that obviously a lot of our events are having to move online. And actually we've seen that as a great opportunity, because what it's meant is that we can open it up to international contributors in a way that we couldn't have done if we had run it as we had originally envisaged. And I think this is really great because it's enabled us to have, I'm going to say, a much richer set of ideas and contributions. And this truly is an international conference, as many of you will know, because Brett, who has done, as I said yesterday, thank you Brett, who's done all of the heavy lifting for this conference and has put it together, had to work out all the different time zones for everybody. So we are truly an international group meeting. We have a few house rules before we move on to the first performance actually, and then the first panel of the day. All the sessions are being recorded. If you don't wish to be recorded, please turn off your microphone and camera for the conference. We ask you that when people are speaking, please turn off your camera and microphone anyway, but please turn your camera back on again during the question and answer session. And that's really just so that obviously when we're going through the Q&A, the speakers can see who's out there, but please do make sure that your mic and camera is switched off when other people are presenting. We recommend that you use the active speaker view in Zoom. If you go up into the top right hand corner of your Zoom screen, you'll see the view icon, and if you click on that, you can move to the active speaker view, and all that does, it just means you don't have lots of little boxes in front of you, but you see the main person speaking and any slides that they're showing. There is a Q&A. It's after all the presentations have taken place, and we would encourage you then to either use the raise hand icon, or what we found yesterday was really helpful was to indicate in the chat if you wanted to ask questions. So please feel free to do that. As the speakers are speaking, you can add questions into the chat, and the chair will go and go through those and either read them out or invite you to speak and ask your question directly. And finally, please be nice to each other. As I say, we are truly an international conference. We have people from all over the world, from different time zones and at different career stages. So please be aware of that when you are asking your questions, and be kind. So I'll hand over to Brett now to do the first introduction for the day.
Thank you, Claire, and hello everybody, and good morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time zone you are. Before we get on to the first panel, I'm really pleased that we have another poetry performance from Gordon Mead. Those of you who were here yesterday will know about this already, but just to introduce this for those who are joining us for the first time today. When we were putting all of this together, we had a kind of concern, as very often happens at conferences, that they can feel like just a succession of papers and the whole thing isn't kind of joined together. And so when Gordon contacted us and suggested doing some of his animal-related poetry, we thought it'd be really nice if he would agree to kind of do poems throughout as a way of joining the whole event together. So he opened the event yesterday and he ended the day yesterday. So thank you, Gordon, for those. And then his final performance is this morning, where he's going to give us 2 poems. So I'll pass over to you now, Gordon.
Okay, thanks very much. So this morning I'm going to read another couple of poems from Zoo Speak. Both these poems are about bears, a brown bear from a zoo in Germany and a Malayan sun bear from a zoo in Thailand. So if you could put this first slide up, Brett, that'd be great. Thank you. Brown Bear, Germany, 2008. I'm aware of what you are, and I'm also aware of what you are thinking. You are a human being. I'm aware of what you are, and I'm also aware of what you're thinking. You are a human being, and you are thinking, I am something else. I'm aware of what you are thinking. You are a human being, and you are thinking, I am something else, put here for your entertainment. I'm aware of what you are, and I'm also aware of what you are thinking. You are a human being, and you are thinking, I am something else, put here for your entertainment. That makes it easier for you to ignore me. I'm aware of what you are, and I'm also aware of what you are thinking. You are a human being, and you are thinking, I am something else, put here for your entertainment. That makes it easier for you to ignore me and the wire mesh that surrounds me. I'm aware of what you are, and I'm also aware of what you are thinking. You are a human being, and you are thinking, I am something else, put here for your entertainment. That makes it easier for you to ignore me and the wire mesh that surrounds me, the wire mesh that separates us. I'm aware of what you are, and I'm also aware of what you are thinking. You are a human being, and you are thinking, I am something else, put here for your entertainment. That makes it easier for you to ignore me and the wire mesh that surrounds me, the wire mesh that separates us and your way of thinking from mine. Okay, so if we could put up the second slide, that'd be great. Thank you. And this one's called Malayan Sun Bear, Thailand, 2008. I'm just one of the ghosts that you are likely to see here, if you're willing to look. I am just one of the ghosts that you are likely to see here, if you are willing to look past the sheet of glass. I am just one of the ghosts that you are likely to see here, if you are willing to look past the sheet of glass that separates us. I have. I am just one of the ghosts that you are likely to see here, if you are willing to look past the sheet of glass that separates us. I have raised my right paw. I am just one of the ghosts that you are likely to see here, if you are willing to look past the sheet of glass that separates us. I have raised my right paw and placed it against the pane. I am just one of the ghosts that you are likely to see here if you are willing to look past the sheet of glass that separates us. I have raised my right paw and placed it against the pane. Look into my eyes, my gaze. I am just one of the ghosts that you are likely to see here if you are willing to look past the sheet of glass that separates us. I have raised my right paw and placed it against the pane. Look into my eyes. My gaze can cut right through it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gordon. That was really great, and thank you for the poems you did yesterday as well. And thanks for agreeing to present 3 times. We've kind of called on you considerably more than everyone else over this, and it's great.
Okay, I just want to say one final thing.
Go ahead.
The book's available from Enthusiastic Press in London, and over the Christmas period you can get it for £5.
Okay, that's great. We'll let you have a plug, that's fine.
Thank you.
But thank you, it's brilliant. You've helped us kind of set the tone for the whole 2 days and kind of key questions and so on, so that's brilliant.
Thanks very much. Enjoyed it very much. Cheers.
Brilliant. Okay, we're going to move on to the first panel. The one thing I want to check in terms of this, because when we started today, we didn't have all the speakers. Sneha's here. And the first speaker should be Carolina Eckhoust, but I can't see you here, but you might be under a different name, because that can kind of happen. So is Carolina here? I don't think so. Okay, so we might have a speaker missing. And then Wenxi, you're here, aren't you? I can see the name. Yes, no, okay. What we might have to do then, and I'll go, is Sneha, if you're okay to present first.
That's all right.
Yeah, is that fine?
Yeah, that's fine.
Hopefully we'll be able to move on to the 2 other papers as well. Okay, so I'll pass over to you, Sneha Gurgutia, whose paper is More Than Human Methodologies in Ethnography of Precarity in Delhi.
Thank you. I'll quickly share my screen.
Yep.
Just a minute. I think just a minute. I think I needed to turn on select share computer sound. Okay. Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yeah. Brilliant.
Okay.
Great.
Hello everyone. I'm Sneha Gurgutia I'm a PhD student in National Institute of Advanced Studies in Bengaluru, India. My PhD is part of a larger project called Urban Ecologies, and we are here on tutors and funded by the ERC. So I'm going to present to you on more than human methodologies that I used in the ethnography of precarity in Delhi. Throughout this presentation, you'll see a lot of photographs, mainly from the 2 sites where I majorly did my ethnography, and the pictures are taken by me. And okay, we shall start now. Okay. So I want to first talk to you about the post-human turn and more than human approach very briefly, then about my PhD study also very briefly, and then I'll talk about the ethical considerations that underwent in designing this more than human approach, and to specifically discuss some of my methods. On your right, you can see a picture from one of the sites where the participants of my study, a 56-year-old man and pigs, are seen together in one frame. The man is feeding the pigs by repurposing a pothole as a feeding trough. In recent decades, many disciplines and areas of academic study, such as anthropology, geography, social theory, social history, and the social sciences and humanities, have witnessed the post-human turn. Therein, these studies have given cognizance to human-animal relations, the multitude of life forms that make the city, and that non-human animals should neither be treated as the ultimate other, nor as a means to better understand humans. These studies have recognized that interspecies mingling is fundamental to city life, and that the multitude of life shape and are shaped by political, economic, and cultural forces. It is therefore important that non-human animals not just be represented in the social, but that they also be given voice, agency, and subjectivity. However, in the absence of a shared language and the inability to interpret them, this task becomes difficult, especially in academic research. The key, as some have discussed, is to give up on the idea of speciesism, account for species multiplicity, and be accommodative of differences. So I've placed, in this slide, I've placed a cover of a book, which for me, in some ways, was a seminal text. Yeah, off to the next slide. Such sentiments are very well accommodated by multi-species methods that studies a host of organisms and more than human methods that aims to decentralize the human. An ethnographic mode of inquiry that is central to all of the above disciplines that I mentioned before can be inclusive of these methods. This is because ethnography has the ability to pay close attention to the symbolic forms, practices, objects, and discourses of everyday life that creates a multidimensional picture of interactions, mostly taking place in nuanced settings and a cultural context by a way of engaging the researcher to engage physically, discursively, and emotionally with those under investigation. It therefore has the potential to acknowledge the multi-species or the more than human entanglements that essentially comprise social life. Moreover, ethnographic methods can also be creatively adapted, employing different kinds of techniques of data collection and interpretation to meet such demands. In this picture, you'll see two photos. In one photo, you can see goats, pigs, dogs, chicken on one side, people carrying their children. You can see other elements, inanimate objects that make the ethnography very rich, such as water drums, since this settlement had a scarcity of water. Again, potholes, which are being repurposed as feeding troughs. On the other picture on the right, you see a man feeding ants. This man, whom I met once during my ethnography, told me that as soon as he comes home from work, he washes his hands and feet and quickly mixes flour, clarified butter, and sugar, and then sets off to feed ants. In the background, you can see more people, cattle, dogs, and on the other side of this picture, there were pigs. This paper will discuss such more than human ethnographic methods used in the study of human-animal relationships and precarity in Delhi's informal settlements. The study was designed to include non-human animals such as pigs, goats, and chicken that ubiquitously coexist alongside these humans in informal settlements. It was conducted over a period of 11 months. I had planned for more, but it was cut short due to COVID. In mainly 2 field sites in Delhi's informal settlements. What was methodologically very important and integral to my study was that most of the data collection took place at the informal settlement itself, while accompanying the rearers as they looked after their livestock, feeding them or just watching them over on the streets near the jhuggies or the huts, the temporary huts, open drains, on wastelands, on garbage mounds, and other dumping or derelict sites. You can see some of the sites in the pictures depicted above and the 3 species of the animals that I've researched with. During these interactions, the research would engage in in-depth interviews by way of informal conversations with the rearers and other human participants of the study, to record interactions with non-human animal participants and observe their activity. Written field notes, along with visual and non-verbal methods such as photography and videography, was utilized. These photos and videos were based on observations conducted ad libitum and opportunistically. As a participant observer in the field, the researcher also became a part of the porcine, caprine, and avian life worlds that are often made obscure in humanist narratives in urban studies. So you can see that in a video in the end and in this pictures also that I'm present in these pictures quite close. Some animals are wary of my presence, some are some are going about their activity in my presence. So that's what I meant by becoming a part of their life world. Now, in the next set of slides, I've done sort of like an experiment. I'm going to take you through a set of photos. One set of photos were taken by me, and the other set of photos were taken in the same site and in similar locations within the site. While I was scouting for field site, when I had not started my field work, but I was looking at what kind of sites I can work in. And I feel that these two photos, like I found during my field work, that most of the photos had a very anthropocentric approach. They were not very watchful of animals in their surroundings. And I think that these photos represent what I would like to call an anthropocentric city. And whereas some other photos, like the photos that I've taken, where I've been very careful about having a more than human approach, those photos you'll see are replete with diverse life forms, as you've also seen in the photos before. So one of the foundational beliefs in the research when I was doing it, designing it in my head, it was that in the process of uneven development that disenfranchises humans, there's a concomitant relegation of non-humans, and it is under these circumstances that people and animals often establish significant relationships to deal with precarity. The major objective was then to situate animals in this urbanizing landscape of the global south, in the hope that including animals in the urban narrative will change the way we see the urban. But this need to include animals and be attentive to the diverse forms of life was just not a question of ethics. It was also suggestive of an epistemological and political turn in urban studies. Another ethical conundrum, but before that, I'll just show you the picture. So you can see the picture taken, the first picture taken from one end of a drain in site A, and the another picture taken from other side in drain, along the drain in the same site, in the same location actually. But in the first picture, it was taken early hours in the mornings, and those are the time when the animals are not released from their coop, like especially the chicken here. Whereas this picture was taken based on the temporality of the animals, that the sites were visited at times, at all kinds of times, and also at times when one would be able to locate the animals in these landscapes, and see how this pictures paint very different pictures of the urban. Another ethical conundrum that came from the fact that animals could not speak for themselves and write text, and therefore this inclusion had to be representative, meaning non-human animals are included via humans talking and writing about them. On inclusion, Sandra Swart, in her studies on including human horses in South African history, shows how shifts in social history itself could provide the tools for such inclusion by exploring history from below and by following Survey's call, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, for a sensory history, whereby she found that rural and urban landscapes are soundscapes of Southern Africa were significantly different because of horses. Exploring from below means looking at underrepresented and marginal groups such as women's histories, history of post-colonial natives, a history of labor populations, history of the gay community, history of the so-called Black community. And I think the same, what she says is the same concept was used to explore the history of horses also. So this highlights that notions of accountability, ideology, and ethics could lead to approaches that can capture animal subjectivities. However, it is not just in including, but also in writing about non-human animals that there is a significant anthropomorphism. And thus the notions of agency and lived experience of the animals came into question. Swart also spoke about how looking at the bodies and behavior of the animals through their photographs played an important role in capturing the lived experiences of the horses for writing them in history. As for agency, she said that it requires that we reassess the concept of agency itself and look in quotidian acts of rebellion and small private protests that these horses were making that are otherwise overlooked. This brought to light another fact that first and foremost, the problem in more than human research is of interpreting the non-human and offering them a greater voice. Therefore, designing methods that destabilize the centrality of the human researcher, such as visual and non-verbal methods like photographs and videos, could help by foregrounding non-human behavior and actions, giving them more agency. It is also important here to point out that employing photography as a method would play another significant role, that is of archiving the city's present. So this is another photo where the woman here is actually a participant from my study, but this is a photo picked up from an article in the Daily Mail where she's standing here in a pile of garbage. Please take a look at her, take a look at this garbage heap here, the drain here, the metro railway line and the pillars here. And I'll show you another picture just taken at this spot behind the woman. You can take a look at this spot. This is the heap of garbage behind her. The drain is here, the pillar is here, the transmission lines are here, and it was taken at around 8 or 9 in the morning, on a winter morning. You can see a chicken here and some pigs lying over here. Now, some may argue that to do ethnography is to write rich, thick notes of observation of what goes around in a deep state of immersion in the participants' environs and culture. So it seemed only obvious that I include non-human participants of this study in my notes with least anthropomorphism. Field notes alone could not suffice to this effect. Though some field notes were always actively taken while on field work, most of the field notes were a post-event articulation, and the focus of the researcher while trying to write about the non-human activity kept continuously shifting to engaging with the human participants who were speaking or paying attention to them as a lot was happening around. However, many times the field notes were almost ethological, recording every minute activity, such as pigs getting up, then sitting down, then getting up, resting, taking a dip in the drain, eating, or goats just sitting around in the afternoon doing nothing, telling how animals spend their time, and therefore capturing cohabitation, coevolution, embodied cross-speciality species sociality with a multitude of critters. Some of these terms are not mine, they are from a quote that I've quoted in the paper. I'll show you another picture at this point. This is from another site taken. Please take a look at the houses here, the electric line mesh, the blue drums storing water, vehicles parked outside, women doing their everyday activities, a man walking through a street, one of the major streets, Central Street, that bifurcates the bylanes and all. And the second picture is taken in the same site in a different street, but pay attention to the mesh of wires, to the bicycles parked outside the houses, to the blue and green drums storing water, and people going about their daily work. And what do we see here? We see a goat walking the streets, which was actually a usual sight in Block C of this settlement. Another approach that was used was the responsible anthropomorphism, a term used by Johnston in his 2008 study, whereby the researcher engaged with those who spent most of the time with animals, and in this case, the rearers. Visual data like photos and videos then serve the purpose of making information provided by the rearers concerning animal life more believable and convincing. For example, when the rearers would say that, would describe the pig's daily activities as just a sequence of eating and sleeping the whole day, the multiple photos that were taken at different times of the day through different seasons corroborated that fact. The methods also required that the researcher paid close attention to these animals, hearing what they heard and seeing what they saw, ensuring their participation in the ethnography. Therefore, a trinity of these methods, field notes, photos, and videos, and a more than human approach helped paint a picture of informal settlements in Delhi, where animals and not just people co-constitute the everyday. In the end, I'll play a video where you can see chicken at around 9 or 10 in the morning, just going about their daily life, pecking from the drain, and they're on the street, they're pecking from the drain, they're just foraging around, while their caretaker, the rearer, is sitting on one side on a chair overlooking them. One can also see that the street is bustling with people, the vehicles parked, there is a person just Across the street, he's a salesperson selling spices on his bicycle with an announcement. And the blue drums, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Sneha. That was really, really interesting. Look forward to a kind of conversation with you later about this.
Thank you.
As Claire said at the outset, what we're going to do is take all the papers and then do the Q&A at the end. It still looks like I have one of the speakers missing. Carolina, I think, is not here. And I think I recognize all the names I can see in front of me, so I don't think it's somebody who's here under a different name, but I will just do a shout out. Carolina, are you here? I don't think you are. Okay. So the other paper today is Wenxi Liu and Erika von Essen. Wenxi, are you there? I can see that you're there, and I'm hoping you're going to turn your microphone on.
Yes, can you hear me, Brett?
Yes, I can hear you. That's great. So your paper, Guarding Crops from Monkey Troops, farmer-monkey interaction near a nature reserve in Guangxi, I will guess. That's my pronunciation.
Great. That's a good pronunciation. Yes.
Are you sharing your screen?
Yes, I can. I can do that. Wait.
Thank you.
No, wait. I'll first share and so can you see the screen?
Yep, I can, yeah.
Yes. So hello, everybody. It's an honor to join this seminar and to present my recent study with my supervisor, Erika von Essen. I'm a master's student. I was a master's student in Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences. And this is my work that has been done in wildlife crop damage, but I try to apply a multi-species lens. So our aim of the presentation is first to share our study about crop damage by wildlife, but by adding the multi-species lens. And also we would like to hear your comments in our piece of work, and we hope to be inspired in methodology and further implications. So why we choose to study wildlife, why we choose to study the crop damage by macaques near a nature reserve. First, it has been a prevalent problem in this nature reserve. As you can see, the landscape, human settlements, they are down in the valley surrounded by steep hills. Sorry. And the livelihood in such landscape is heavily dependent in agriculture, mainly sugarcane. And also because of the high biodiversity in this area, there has been strict wildlife-related policy, such as the setting up of nature reserve, wildlife protection law, that literally banned all types of wildlife hunting. That makes the wildlife crop damage problem prevalent. And also we choose to solely look into macaques because first, they are quite frequent in crop raiding, and also they show substantial flexibility and creativity. So that makes it ideal to study the interaction between farmers and monkeys in terms of crop guarding and raiding. So our research tries to look into how farmers and monkeys interact in a primate cooperating scenario, and also how their interactions are shaped by socio-ecological factors over time. Some of my friends might wonder why we call it interaction instead of effect, because it follows the trend of breaking the nature-culture barrier in studying human-animal relationships, such as the concepts of more than human perspective, ethnology, mutual ecologies, those concepts you might be familiar with. And also we emphasize interaction perspective, which means we try to make it more interdisciplinary and to focus on animal agency that and also we see we try to focus on their relationships instead of these two entities. And also we try to emphasize that such relations, they are quite symmetrical. Well, in our research, we applied the theoretical concepts from post-humanism that emphasize the relationality and also a broader sense of agency. So we see the concept of non-human animal agency as the precondition to consider farmer-monkey relations. And also we emphasize the mutuality, how this relationship is mutual. It has mutual response and interaction. And also when we try to look into their interaction in a micro level, we use the concept of embodied knowing and adjustment because we see knowing and adjustment, they are inseparable to describe their interaction process. And at the same time, we apply human-animal landscape relation because we also try to emphasize the role of the landscape in shaping their interactions. For the methods that we have used, we try to apply an ethnographical approach that also tries to look at monkeys as equal as farmers. So we used narratives and on-site observation. For narratives, we try to adopt the idea of responsible anthropomorphism because we believe that people that has long contact with the wildlife, they have the credibility to speak for the animals. And when collecting data, we chose 2 villages near the nature reserve as marked triangular in this map, and we collected information from villagers, rangers, as well as wildlife authorities. And afterwards, we documented information and did some text analysis. So here are our findings. First, we looked into micro-level interaction. We see that there was spatial mutual knowing and adjustment between farmers and monkeys. For example, crops in the distant valley or the foot of the hill, they are more prone to be damaged by monkeys. And also there's a temporal pattern for monkeys to raid the crops, usually at dawn and dusk, because because they know that there's less human around that time. For example, these are illustrations from our villagers. Monkeys, they dare not do They did not get too close to the land near the village, only to steal some now and then. But it's different in the valley. They come down from the hill in groups and can finish the whole plot of corn in 2 to 3 hours. And you can see how the farmers put on the nets on the land, because it's right near the hill, near the hill, and it's vulnerable to attacks. To protect the crops from damage, there are several gardening techniques adopted by farmers, such as scarecrows and the smoke and newly cut leaves. It makes sense, according to farmers, because that can induce fear from monkeys. And also nets and plastic films are widely used, especially if it's been put on multiple layers. To overcome the guarding techniques and the continuous guarding by farmers, monkeys will also develop raiding tactics, such as playing guerrilla. For example, if villagers they see monkeys left, they would think they would not come back. However, in fact, they were hiding somewhere in the forest and wait until the farmers left to come down the mountain and steal the crops. Also, they have monkey guard when they try to raid the crops in groups, which I can explain later. And also, they make use of the landscape by approaching the crop from hills that has more trees, so that they can escape faster. And also, they adapt to crop types. For example, the newly planted watermelon and citrus fruits in this village. For the monkey guards, villagers explain that when monkeys raid the crop, the monkey guard stays high on the tree and shouts once he finds humans coming, so that monkeys down on the ground can flee. However, if he fails to notice human, he will be later beaten by his follow-ups. And here's the remains of the residues of sugarcane that was left by monkey raiders. And also we noticed the macro level, how their interactions are affected by both human activities and also the change of landscape. Here, as an obvious change is the growing population of monkeys. And also I emphasize their preference to crops because according to some conservation staff, it's because their land has the natural habitat for monkeys has been exploited by farmers, and that's why they tend to commit more raiding. But however, in fact, from history, the landscape in this area has been reforested quite, and there's out migration in this village. Therefore, it doesn't seem to be the reason of their habitat exploitation. That is mostly the case in other countries. So I emphasize their preference to crops, and their success in crop raiding really further reinforced their motivation to raid the crop. And also there's an observed decrease of fear by monkeys, which is also affected by less human presence because of the wildlife protection policy, and also their their less dependence on natural resources. And also I emphasize the change landscape, such as the reforestation program carried out in this area. So we can see how the changes related to human and landscape and animals can affect each other. So after the findings, we gained a deeper understanding in first the agency of monkeys, as we can see their preference to cross, the motivation to avoid being caught, and their fear to humans. And also we see how human and animals are interacting and together with the surrounding landscape, and also how the landscape also plays an important role in this. And also we would like to discuss on the methodology. As you can see, we used extensive subjective interpretation from local people, because we believe that these can bring local and everyday knowledge that can help us to really understand the interaction, and to understand also animals' worlds through subjective attentiveness and empathy. However, we also notice the challenges it brings on misestimation, sometimes because of poor memory, or sometimes it's more intensious. And also the possibility of self-projection, that you might project your own emotion or thinking on animal behavior. And also we notice the trend of using bio-tracking technology to further give animal agency, so that they become the authors of their own narratives, and also to better recognize them as actors and individuals. The further implication of this research, we consider it as it can contribute to the rethinking of management strategies. But our landscape management sometimes shall not only focus on giving animals space, but also to consider how to cohabitate, and also the necessity to disturb wildlife crop damage. And also, as we see that farmer-monkey interaction consists of mutual knowing and adjustment process. So how to better improve the knowing and adjustment of farmers, so that they can better cope with challenges of wildlife crop damage. And also we suggest to improve our methodology by continue in adopting a subjective interpretation as important information source, but also to integrate the other technologies that can have more direct observation of animal behavior. And here's some of our references related to our interaction perspective adopted in our research, and most of the ideas come from such literature. So I share my gratitude here, and that's all for my sharing of the research, and we hope to hear your valuable inputs as well. So thank you. Thank you, Brett. Oh, is anybody here?
Yes, I'm here. Don't worry.
Yeah. Sorry, I cannot see.
It's fine, it's fine. Do you want to stop? That's it, brilliant. Stop sharing your screen, that's fantastic. Great, thank you for that talk. I will just check for a last time, just to make sure, because I don't want to leave the third speaker out if they are here. and in case their screen name is different to their presentation name. So Carolina, are you here? I don't think you are, but I better just check, say in case it's a different screen name. No, I don't think so. Okay, so unfortunately we'll miss that talk, but that's fine because that means we've got more time to discuss the two excellent talks that we've had. So Snare, can you is it okay if you put your camera back on? And as we've done yesterday, I'll invite everybody, if you're okay with doing so and you have the bandwidth, to put your cameras back on, because it's nicer for I think for the speakers and for us as a group, if we're having a conversation, for us to be able to see each other. So if you're able to do that and willing to do it, then that would be great. Thank you. So yeah, I'll invite questions, responses, comments, and as ever, I will also kind of tell the speakers, if you want to respond to each other's talks or if you have questions for each other, then of course you're allowed to ask questions as well as answer them. I'll go to Uta first of all, who says she has a question.
Yes, I have. Thank you so much, both of you, for your talks. And there's some issue that I'm very curious about, both of you. First, you said you talked about taking the animal perspective, and then Weng Xu, you talked about the bio-tracking technology. I'm very curious what you think about these technologies like critter cams and wildlife cameras to capture the agency of animals. Do you think is it an ethical problem, for example, or can we really capture their agency with these technologies if they don't know, for example, that they carry a technology? And I have an example in mind of a Japanese artist. He worked very early with his dog, and then people said, oh, of course, you have a camera vision, but the dog, he sniffs, you don't get the smell. So there are many things to think about, and just wanted to know your opinion on these technologies.
Yes. Recently, I think the wildlife cameras, they are really widely used in biology, zoology, for example. And first, I think it can really bring us to extend our vision, for example, to really understand more about wildlife, animal behavior. So in this way, I still think that it can give more agency to the animals, because they can fully speak for themselves, not only not being interpreted by other researchers or other local people. However, I also noticed the ethical problem shared by you. I noticed that there might be some concern that it's more the conservation has been more affected by big data, and it can be more coercive after collecting such big data. And also we notice the interesting part is, yes, animals, they do have agency, so they have the awareness of these technology applied, and then they sometimes can try to manipulate such a wildlife camera. So that's also interesting to see how they respond to such technology. Anyway, I think you really raised a very good question, and that's what I can respond.
I don't have much experience working with animals before. Like, this was the first time I was researching with the non-human, so to say. But I was part of a bird watching group which was restoring a wetland in Delhi, and they used camera trapping to look at monitor bird activity and to also bird activity in the night, which proved very helpful. They could capture some birds that they weren't able to capture in the daytime, and I was at that site where they had installed the camera. It was like an upland, sort of like an upland, small ridge kind of a thing, and then water body. And that didn't seem problematic to me. When I keep on reading their articles, this is an article that I read on their website, and when I was even thinking about my methods, because I've just ventured into this and I really wanted to capture in some way some of the subjectivities of animals, having worked with people all my life, I didn't know how to do that. I love animals, but how to do it? So I was wondering that in the end, but I kept on doing it, not knowing where it is going. And in the end, the photos and the videos, they told me so much. After 6 months of research, when I was writing a report, and I just realized that they tell me a lot, but I was still not sure. Then in the process of writing this paper, I got to know that, yeah, it actually works to some extent, but really we need to discuss this more. I read a lot of papers in this process, and I realized that nobody also really knows how to do this, like how to capture their subjectivities, their agency, how to include them. It's very, very difficult to say what exactly can be done, what is ethical, what is not. It's so subjective. This question also is so subjective, and it can be decided on a case-to-case basis, is what I felt. But yeah, it requires a lot of discussion, like since we have all ventured into this, like how to, maybe it requires what Brett was saying earlier, like crossing that species boundary, that threshold, and going somewhere else, so that, you know, that ethics can be ensured, that there is proper ethics in this process.
Thank you. Uta, can I ask, was your question then, were you asking about the problems of that technology and what it might not reveal about the animals, or were you asking a question more about kind of issues of privacy and consent? Microphone's off.
So rather what it can reveal, I mean, in the case of this Japanese artist, whom I can't get the name at the moment, but I will send it later. Of course, you see, it's like an experimental film. He has a criticam on the dog, on the back of his dog, and he makes walks through Berlin, and he meets people, and the dog, he sniffs around and he finds interesting things. But for the dog, maybe the visual perception is not very important. Much more important is what he smells. So what we see then in the experimental film is kind of maybe misleading, or maybe telling a story somewhere in between the human and the dog and the environment. So things become kind of unclear. I still find it's an important and interesting work. But to make the conclusion that we see what the dog sees is important, it's you have to go a step back and maybe see it as a whole environment. The artist, the environment, the dog, the people meeting. It's something different. Yeah, but I'm very curious about these methods and what we can develop with them.
Okay, thank you. I mean, maybe it's connected to this, because Anmol has asked if you could jump in. So do you want to respond there, and Amelia as well, and then I'll go to Olia's question. So Anmol.
Yeah. So to your question, I feel, I mean, of course, it can be broken down into multifold. There are many issues, kind of, you know, what's happening around this kind of using these kinds of more these are visually invasive ways of getting into the lives of animals, you know, installing these very secretive camera traps. You're putting them in areas where they're absolutely only reachable to you. You know where they are, where they exist, right? And for me, the first concern would be, what does it actually do to the animal, like in terms of academic, you know, inquiry? What does it reveal, as you know, Brett pointed out, or does it not reveal? And your example makes, you know, absolute sense. Like, you know, the sensing of the dog. How does the dog sense the surroundings? What kind of bodily sense, you know, sense organ does it use to make, you know, idea of its world? That absolutely makes sense. The second thing would be the ethics of using photography and videography itself, for me. Like, in terms of how the discipline of photography has evolved over years, and what it does in kind of fixing how we see animals. Like, do we then only understand animals in terms of how we, you know, observe them through these camera traps? Because it also kind of puts them into these very, you know, fixated categories of saying that, oh, if we're not, you know, there and there's a camera trap, this is what the animals are doing. But I heard this zoologist argue the other day that, which is the third concern, that in the absence of a human subject, which is like an outsider to these kinds of really, these homes, you know, of these animals, it might reveal more in terms of how they are unaffected by the, what are they doing when they are not affected by the presence of a researcher. So, that's the, third kind of question. And I was reading another paper on digital animals. That's what it was called. And what it was trying to put into perspective is that so many times when we are trying to digitize these animals, we are trying to use bio-trackers, and now people also attach GPS to say wolves and dogs, and then say what are the territory mappings. What it does is it creates a digital animal which is slightly different from the actual animal itself. Right. And the thing is, after, say, for example, whenever the animal passes on and dies, the digital animal always gets to stay. And so, which was slightly fascinating for me to kind of read and kind of think through, because it does do that. I mean, the elephant that will be observed in India, in southern Indian forests, will die someday. But that particular videography of the animal and what that animal does and how that animal behaves will kind of stay on. So, so it's a rather complicated kind of method, or I don't know, like a way of kind of getting to know, if we can put it that way. And then I think, and so they're all grounded in like different disciplines, and different disciplines will argue very differently for these things. So I feel there's no one answer kind of to how we think about it. And then we again get back to what Sneha said in terms of, case by case. We look at all of these things very case by case, and not in that kind of a very global kind of perspective through which these kinds of methods should be looked at. So, I mean, I just had a couple of thoughts running through, might not be a response, but something.
Thank you. Sneha, do either of you want to respond to that? I seen the comments. Amelia said she wanted to respond to Uta, which I could do first, or if you want to respond to Anmol, you can, if there's things that you want to say in response to that.
No, Anmol is definitely more knowledgeable on this. Like I said, I took baby steps with this research project, my PhD, and these are very important discussions. I think the fact that he brought out these things, and the question of, I was thinking of photography as novel, but it is true that camera trapping has been there for a very long time. And I think what I guess I didn't understand what Ute, if I'm pronouncing your name properly, what exactly she was hinting. Probably she was hinting to the fact that it's been there for a very long time, and that to some extent it might be problematic, even photography, standing there, visiting the settlements, and like I was visiting the settlements, I was walking by the streets, which I could have walked by even to visit a school run for these children of the settlement on the weekends. And I stay back and I take a picture, and that can also be problematic. And I think this thing always has to be in the conscience of the researcher, that it can be problematic, and in what ways I still don't know. Like, how does it affect the animal? I don't know. How did it affect the goats and the pigs and the chicken I took pictures of? I don't know. That's the reason I was always worried and scared in the field. What am I doing the right thing? Am I not doing the right thing? It took me a lot of time to start taking pictures also. Videos, that's why I don't have as many, because I was always thinking, okay, let me just write field notes. Maybe not, let me not take videos at this point, and all that. So these are, I think, discussions we cannot probably reach to a conclusion today. Probably we have to keep discussing it.
Thank you. Wenshu, do you want to respond, or do you want me to get Amelia's comments first?
Yeah, if I want to, yeah, if I respond, I think both of you, both of Ute and Amo, you mentioned something that is quite inspiring for me, because such camera traps, they are more visualized images that tries to depict the animal's world. However, it can be quite a bit misleading, a little bit, so that we tend to overlook other senses of the animals, or the non-verbal or communication ways other animals. So that was the inspiration that I take from this.
Okay, thank you. Amelia, you said you wanted to respond as well to this discussion, and then I'll move on to Olia's question.
On the one hand, I would like to backtrack a little bit to Uta's response and her description of this particular performance, but also actually to add something on top of what Wenxu just said. This performance about the dog walking in Berlin reminded me of a film that is one of my case studies. It's Heart of a Dog by Laurie Anderson. And there is a scene that's supposed to represent a walk down Manhattan, I think, from the dog's perspective. And what's very interesting about this film, not only the color of the lens has been altered to, in a way, represent what dog's vision would be. So it's mostly bluish green color. There's this bluish green tint, but also through the use of the camera movement, because it's situated very low, very close to the ground, and it moves towards specific objects. And in this case, it's lots of bin bags standing on a pavement. And there is this very specific movement that I recognize from my own experience of dog walking. When my dog is walking, sees garbage, gets really hooked on it, and I have to pull her away because, no, you're not gonna eat that garbage, you have food at home. And I was thinking that, in a sense, through this use of cinematography, what Laurie Anderson managed to capture, at least allude to, is the sense of smell and what guides the dog's interest and what matters to the dog. So I think, even despite the limitations of this media that we have and our own limitations as humans and our own senses, I think we can at least allude to or highlight the presence of other senses and also how they guide other species' attentions and what is interesting to them. So I think there is at least some sort of possibilities. And definitely they can be explored in great detail, in artistic practices, but maybe it can be something that could be also used in other areas. So that's it from me, really.
Thank you, Amelia. I don't know if either of you want to respond to that, or shall I move on to the next?
Maybe I can make just a short comment.
Okay, that's fine.
I really love that film too that you're working on by Laurie Anderson, and I think it's really a multi-species story film because it's always about her and the dog. It's about both species, and I like there's one scene which I really love specifically when she goes with the dog outside in the mountains, and she says, "Oh, it's so interesting. The dog always looks up to the sky. What is he looking for?" And then she understands, oh, he's a small guy. Something could fly up there and could grab him. I never thought about that because no eagle would get me, but he's small and he could be afraid of what's in the sky. And so she really thinks very carefully about these different perspectives, fears you may have in the landscape with different bodies, for example.
Okay. Thank you. I will go to Olia's question. You've been waiting for quite some time, and I feel very rude that we've had to wait. So you posted that some time ago, so I'll come to your question.
Happy to listen to how the conversation evolves. My question is pretty simple, but I guess I'll ask it and then I'll explain where I'm coming from. So I'm just, for Sneha and Wenxu both, can you talk about your results or what you got from actually following these other beings? And I guess where I'm coming at it from is I think it's really admirable. Wenxu, you mentioned something about how it's important to, with the tracking, you're allowing these non-humans to tell their own stories and acknowledging agency. But I wonder if humans and non-humans are so inextricably connected. You know, in Sneha's case, these animals are, you know, part of this huge concrete jungle urban environment, and it connects with the presentation the other day with Mexico City. You know, we think of urban spaces as really human places, but they're not. They're you know, multi-species places. And in Wenxu's case, this, you know, the humans have changed the agricultural terrain so much. So, you know, if there's crop raiding going on, it's because certain food sources don't exist anymore. And so I'm wondering, like, how can we ever really get to, you know, what a monkey is feeling or thinking or what they want to do if we've already kind of influenced the, you know, range of possibilities for them. So yeah, anyway, I was just curious what you took from these methodological strategies that you play with.
Well, first, maybe I should respond to your last question. You were saying how can I prove monkeys' agency when humans they've highly transformed the landscape. Is that what you mean?
Not necessarily prove their agency, but what I'm saying is, like, is it enough to just turn our attention to other beings and say, oh, look, this is where they go, when we've actually changed their, you know, the forest that they live in and the spaces that they go to eat so much. So, I mean, it's really like, is there a way to honor that kind of intermingling between the human and the non-human in our
yes. I think from my research, I can really see how human activities are affecting monkeys' behavior. And how they affect the landscape, and also the animals. For example, okay, in this region, I think 20 years ago there was extensive logging and also reclaiming, opening up the land in this region. So at that time, according to the description of locals, you can hardly see any monkeys because they are hidden in the deep mountains, and because they are disturbed by the logging sound, disturbed by the hunting, and also some other human activities going on. And then you see after the conservation trend going on in this region, and also the out-migration happening in many parts of rural China, and also how people have shifted their way from logging or from collecting firewood to to natural gas. So there's first the forest has been recovered a lot, and also there's less and less people going into going to the mountains. So back then they were quite afraid of people, but now they tend to be more bold to at least to stay in the mountains and also to get closer to the crops. So that's what I heard from the locals, and that's what I feel. Yes, humans, they do affect a lot to animals, and you can clearly see how they interact on this landscape. If I made it clear. And I also tend to think of it as a kind of agency, because you first to know and to respond to the perceived risk in the landscape as monkeys. Yeah. And yes.
No, go ahead.
And I think you asked more. If I should respond to another question, Emila.
Well, yeah, was there other parts of your question that weren't covered in the response there?
No, I think that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Sneha?
Yeah, thank you for your interest.
Yeah. See, for my research, I realized that they've already given me some results, in sense that, like I was saying, that I was mostly engaging with the rearers, the primary caretakers, and I was present all the time in the settlements, and I would visit in the day, in the afternoon, in the evening, during those hours, and I would engage, I would observe these animals, but somehow, like I said, that the animals kept going into the background. Something would take my attention away from them. the settlements are very dense, and a lot used to be happening. There was a lot of noise, a lot of smells, a lot of things happening. Animals, cars, bikes, a lot of things were passing through at the same time, and I kept losing my attention from this. I would start writing field notes, observing them, and in a while, somebody would come up and I would start talking to them, addressing them, because I couldn't avoid that. So these kind of these photos and these videos, they helped me get back to the animal again and again. So my ethnographic notes are richer with descriptions of what the animal is doing because of the photos and the videos. Like even now when I have to think about, sometimes even while writing the notes, you would forget to write about what all was happening. Then you turn on the photos of that day or the videos, and you see that, okay, the focus was on the animals. So the photographs and the videos were taken, but whatever was lacking in the field notes were also made up by the photos and videos. And like I was saying, that even this field notes would help me. Some of them were very ecological. The pig sat, the pig got up, pig sat, pig went to the drain, drank some water, ate a piece of melon that somebody threw in the drain, came back, flapped his ear, sat down, and a lot of this were repetitive. And then it told me that, and then I read a couple of other papers on pig behavior, and one paper said that, in absence of foraging in the wild, pigs tend to do that when food is made available to them. They eat and they sleep the whole day. And that's what the people used to say all the time. They just eat and sleep the whole day. And then I started visiting them multiple times of the day, and I used to observe these activities, take pictures, and I said, okay, perhaps that is true. And so it helped corroborate these facts. It helped bring the animals to the foreground again and again, whenever they would keep going back into my notes, keep getting hidden in my notes. And finally, I've just completed my fieldwork. It's been 6 months because of the COVID, and I'm still to complete all my notes. I'm hoping that I'll be able to make an ethogram of the animal's behavior. However, I don't know, because my observations were not very ethological. I might not be able to interpret this behavior, but I was hoping to make a list of behavior that I observed. And perhaps some of them could be behaviors that were never observed. These animals are not observed so much. Like, we have to understand that this kind of studies have not been done much. It's there, but I think it is taken for granted that these pigs have been there as long as the settlements have been there. One person told me that the first time somebody started rearing a pig in that settlement was the first time somebody settled in that land. It was a person who was a night guard in a school nearby, and he settled in one corner of that land in that settlement. And see, when people come in India, a lot of people, migrant labor, they come from their villages and they bring with them their lifestyles and their lifestyles. And that's why perhaps it's very difficult to say what's urban and what's rural in these settings, because they come to see a piece of land and they rear a pig. It's but natural for them to rear a pig. A pig is was integral to the life of this person, who was perhaps a Dalit, like most of my participants were. That just like maybe I would go to some place, and what would be the first things that I would do when I settle in a new place? Perhaps it's very integral to life, I don't know what I'm saying, but a way of living life. And it's not what we see and think of urban, but then this tells a different story of the urban itself. Yeah.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions, but I want to check that nobody else has first, because I don't want to, as chair, steal the questions if other people have got any. Wenxi, I wanted to ask you about, I was struck by a phrase you used when you were talking about your methods. You talked about responsible anthropomorphism, which I thought was a really interesting phrase. which I really liked, actually. I mean, because anthropomorphism is one of these debates that we, have all the time, and we're nervous about. But I mean, plenty of people obviously have argued there's a productive process of anthropomorphism as well. So I was wondering if you could outline what you meant by responsible anthropomorphism. And I think I was thinking of this in terms of its opposite as well. What you might consider irresponsible anthropomorphism.
Okay. Yes, and especially when we talk about our methodology to nature scientists, they kind of always question the objectivity of our research. However, I think the idea of I think I try to kind of justify the importance of using subjectivity in understanding animal behaviors, because we need empathy and also affectivity to understand the other people and also the other species. So without fully putting our sense, our mind into someone else, we cannot understand how do they feel and how do they think. So from this point of view, I think, yes, the extent of anthropomorphism is inevitable for us to understand. However, we also notice the possibility of misusing such empathy. As I mentioned in my presentation, the possibility of self-projection, that you didn't really understand the animal's perspective, but only to project your thoughts, your values onto the animal. So this usually happens to people who doesn't really have close contact with the animal. For example, when we just encountered an animal in the street or in a zoo, we tend to think that they are lovely, they liked us, they want to have something from us. However, such encounter, they're quite short, and so that's why, that's what I consider irresponsible, because you didn't have enough time, or you didn't have to put on your attentiveness to really understand their perspective. And I call it responsible because it is from people who has been encountered with the animal for quite frequently, for a long time. So I think their understanding is much more valid from us as outsiders. So that's what I call responsible anthropomorphism. And I got this idea from a paper as well, so I can share you, and there will be more illustration about this.
Okay, that's great, thank you. Zoe, you've put in the chat, could be interesting to discuss responsible and irresponsible anthropodenial. I don't know if that's a question or just a statement. Do you want to?
No, there was just a comment. I'm not really sure where I was going with that. I've been working on that topic between anthropomorphism and anthropodenial, and how they are both doing a disservice both to the animals that we are trying to account for and to our own understanding of our place within the biosphere and the intermingling of our experiences. And I think it's quite interesting when we're talking about monkeys, who are, well, genetically, socially, and sometimes behaviorally quite close to us. So I'm pretty sure that the people who live in direct contact with these monkeys must have a different interpretation of the difference between humans and monkeys and the similarities between humans and monkeys. So it was just a thought that I was sharing. I'm not sure if there's a real question. It's like, so not really a question, more of a comment. I'm being that kind of person today.
That's fine. That's fine. Thanks for the contribution. Sneha, I wanted to ask you about, which is connected to your talk, but it was interesting, the conversation that went on in the chat box. in response to your talk, talking about feeding ants, and you've put, my own family regularly makes 3 rotis, one for the crow, one for the cow, and one for the dog before every major meal. But then you've also gone on to say this can be problematic in some instances, such as policing of other faiths based on reverence for the cow in the Hindu faith. I was just interested in, could you tell me a bit more about that context? It's not a context I know, those aren't debates I know, so I know it's kind of tangentially connected to your paper, but it also helps give a context.
But it's important. It's important that we also know about this. Like, in India, India Hinduism is a majority religion, and it's also the majoritarian population. And there are a lot of other religions and cultures which become the minority. And in India currently, a majoritarian politics is going around, where the ruling party is of a majoritarian Hindu faith. And how the cow, which is revered by the Hindu, is consumed by the Muslim, and even the Dalit groups, which are a lower caste Hindu group, considered a lower caste Hindu group, and how policies that are framed around protection of the cow has ended up into violent deaths and lynchings in India since the past 5-6 years that this party has been in rule. And the news articles and the coverage and the amount of writings that come on and are being brought on the subject says that perhaps this is the highest that it has been since this party came to power. And it has also, there's this wonderful paper by Yamini Narayanan where she talks about Jugaad and in the sector of the contraband beef in India, and she speaks about how such laws and policies lead to greater informal activities, which lead to greater violence when people are trying to find innovative ways which might sometimes be violent to transport these animals for meat across borders. And so I see, so what I was saying was coming from there, from this background of what's happening in India currently. It's not just the animal policing that happens, it's policing of even people's behavior. Like recently, the state of Uttar Pradesh, which is also a bastion of the ruling party, it passed a law of love jihad. So that law says that anybody, anybody who is found to be suspected of getting somebody from a Hindu faith converted to a minority faith is doing this conversion. It basically means that this conversion is a part of jihad, which is a larger Muslim tactics to convert people, get them to their side, and that person should be persecuted for 5 to 10 years in prison. But how do you decide that when somebody converts to some other faith, it is under the influence of somebody and it's for such larger aims? So these are the kind of changes that are coming about. And the animal, I feel the concern for the animal is not at the center of this. Because the paper when Yamini Narayanan says that though they keep on giving impetus to the milking industry, to the dairy industry. So where are the older cows and the non-wanted male calves going to go? They will be, the state doesn't take any responsibility for them. So they get continuously transported and used for meat. So until you're going to curb the dairy industry, the meat industry cannot be controlled in the way that you want, then what's going to happen? So yeah, I'll send that paper also across.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really useful to hear those contexts, and obviously the debates and the set of things that so many of us are doing are kind of situated within those specific kind of national and local and international contexts. In the chat, Helena has said, like to ask a question to Sneha.
Do you hear me?
Hi, Helen.
Hi, Sneha.
Hi.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me, first of all, Brett. I have 3 points to make. Just to start with, I would love to acknowledge Ute's bird, and then, sorry, it's Alara's cat, who are with us today. I think it's lovely to have this multi-species participation. The point I wanted to make is I really, Sneha, I really loved your presentation, and you know how much I'm a fan of the research. My own research is also about pigs, so we have a lot in common. I was fascinated by what you said about the fact that getting back to your pictures would make you focus again, because I've been experiencing the opposite, not so much with pictures, but I thought it was so interesting when you show this picture, I mean the film, after having shown the pictures, you show the video, and all of a sudden all the sounds came in, and that really was really overwhelming. And for me, looking back at my field work through the picture, the videos showed that it came back all to me, and I realized how this multi-species soundscape was present there, and you tend to forget it. So for me, it complicated, it made it more complex. All of a sudden, sitting in my office, listening to those sounds made this situation much more well, much deeper. And I have, I'm lucky enough to have to do my field work in a place where a researcher from my university called Anya Kan-Giser is also working, and she's working with sounds, and she's not working at all with multi-species research. She came to my field. I mean, it's an atoll island from the Pacific where climate change problems are huge, and she came there as a researcher about climate change, and she's recording sounds. And when listening to these recordings, she's really complicated. I mean, I hear the pigs, I hear the dogs, the cats there, the goats, I hear everything, but she's hearing something else. And what I really like with her approach is that she comes to this island and says, I'm looking at climate change, at something dramatic, and I'm hearing life, I'm hearing joy, I'm hearing the everyday. And so she says that working with sounds is a way of working and staying with the trouble. And this is something that I really like with sounds. And I wonder if you work at all with sounds. And my real question was the second, is this. I know that you're working with precarity. This was not about, I mean, you've been talking about methodology, but I would be really interested to hear more about how you use precarity as an entry point. How do you translate that into your methodology? How do you define pig precarity? How do you define people's precarity and shared precarity? How do they combine? How does it become a more than human precarity in Delhi? Thank you.
I quite forgot the first question, but I'll about the sound. I forgot the first question that you asked. I'm not remembering.
No, sorry, it was not really a question. I was just giving.
Okay. Okay. How do you deal with the sound? So the second question, I'll talk about precarity. So precarity emerged. I was known to the concepts of precarity, and that academia is delving into it in the concept of the urban settlements. But when I went to field, certain things emerged after field work, after 2 months of like very rigorous field works. And one of those things was precarity. Like I ended up using that term, me and my guide, we ended up using that term for when I would send him notes, or you know, we would converse, we would end up using the term precarity. And it sort of became very central to everything that I was observing there. Like initially when I started, the major themes that ran across my entire research proposal was that of informality, was of marginality, was of illegality, what is informal and illegal, and all of these terms and these concepts. But precarity emerged into everything else that I was observing. I have been observing that how waste becomes infrastructure for animals, how animals become infrastructure for people dealing with precarity, and everything is precarious. That waste that becomes a habitat and a resource for the animal is precarious. The animal that becomes resource for the people is precarious. The care practices are precarious in the nature of it, the way it is done. When I entered the field, it was very difficult for me to see certain things. They were so stark and they were hurtful for my sentiments, but a lot of discussions happened, and I learned to see care in those practices. What somebody would see as when they were capturing the pigs, it was really hurtful to see that, but there was care in that too. And I realized that it was precarious care that was present in a lot of practices. And that's how I came to use the term precarity in terms of their surroundings, in terms of their care practices, in terms of the animals surrounding. Like the animals would constantly, some of them would just make a home in a pile of plastic garbage. Some of them would, when there was a fallow land available, they would make a nest by digging up by cutting the grass. So they they adapted to the surrounding, making do with whatever there was. So yeah, I've even seen goats eating fruit pulp, tearing open packets of plastic and eating from them, also eating green vegetables, the remains of green vegetables that are thrown. So yeah, it comes from that.
Thank you. I'm afraid we're kind of out of time, so I just want to invite everybody to join me in thanking Sneha and Wenshu, not just for their papers, but for responding to questions and comments so thoughtfully and in loads and loads of detail. So thanks. So thanks a lot. So we've got about half an hour break now. We're back. This is where I have to check times because of time zones. 11:15 UK time, whatever time that is, wherever you are. Just a reminder that the next session is the same Zoom link as we're in now, so you can log out if you want, or you can just turn your camera and microphone off and leave it running and then come back. And we shall see you all in just over half an hour. Thanks a lot, everyone.